Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sandra, and today I'm so excited to talk about a book that came out last week called Evocation by ST Gibson, aka Saint Gibson. I received this physical ARC last summer, I believe, and I was immediately blown away because this has to be the most beautiful advanced reader copy that I have ever seen. So much thought was put into it. I love the tarot card motif. The foil detailing is so pretty, and I love the tarot cards that are representative of David, who is one of the main characters of this book, and I think he's actually the focus of this book. Evocation has like 34 chapters, and he definitely had like 41% of the total on-page time. And then the other two characters, Moira and Rhys, were pretty evenly split for the rest of that. So this book definitely focuses on David. Saint Gibson's A Dowry of Blood was actually one of my very first advanced reader copies I ever received in late 2020, and after reading that book, I think it still remains as my top Saint Gibson read, followed by Evocation, and then I think An Education in Malice is probably third for me at this point. But all three of the books are so different. A Dowry of Blood's writing is very poetic and flowery, just very rich and atmospheric. Evocation is a little bit straightforward. In reading it, sometimes it felt almost like a screenplay. Saint Gibson's dialogue is really good. It sucks you in seamlessly. She doesn't focus on too many of the world building details. You're just kind of dropped into the scene and you live with the conflicts between the characters. One of the themes of this book is polyamory. That's another thing that I really enjoy about Saint Gibson's books is her characters are always so colorful and diverse, and their relationships are always so messy and complex, but I love how she creates the tension between the characters because more than anything, her books are very character driven. It just helps you get bought into the story that way. This book, even though it's focused on David and really the plot is David is suffering a family curse right now, and if he doesn't work together with Moira and Rhys, who are married, and Rhys is actually David's ex-boyfriend. If he's not able to work together with them to break the curse before his 30th birthday, he will die, or his soul will be claimed by a demon. Even though that's the plot device of the book, it almost comes off as secondary because this story is so focused on the relationship between all three of these characters. Things did not end well with Rhys and David, and there's a lot of unfinished business and a lot of closure that is needed, and I don't think Rhys comes across as being over what happened between him and David. It's really just a story about these three complicated characters and how they enter into this polyamorous sort of relationship with one another. And then this plot, this curse, is really just the catalyst for them coming together and then working through all of that. Just to give you a little taste of Saint Gibson's writing in this and how it differs from, like, say, A Dowry of Blood. Chapter 4, we get our first Moira POV, and it reads, Moira Delacroix hummed to herself as she dusted off each piece of amethyst, rose quartz, and citrine in her crystal collection. The windows of her meditation room were thrown open to the balmy weather, welcoming in equinox breezes and the smell of evaporating morning rain. Moira's grandmother had taught her to respect the equinox as a powerful day of rebirth and new life, and it was a perfect time to clean out the clutter of winter. So it's still really beautiful, strong writing, but it's a little more straightforward. And like I said, it almost reads like a screenplay at times because it's so focused on the very intimate interactions between the characters themselves. It's also set in like this very magical community Boston, and there are secret societies. It even grapples with like addiction because David is a recovering alcoholic. There is a relapse scene in the book. So it also grapples with things like that. But also, each of the characters are so different. I don't know if Saint intended for this, but every time I see the names David and Moira on page together, I think of Schitt's Creek because Moira and David are such strong characters and I love them. That show is hilarious to me. And so I always picture them. And then Rhys, I always, like, my mind always just goes to Akatar, but I know that's not what she intended, but like that's where my brain takes all three of these characters, like seeing their names on page together. All three of them are such strong characters. Moira is this black woman. She is very competent at what she does. She's very spiritual. She is what's called intuitive, and actually David is also intuitive, so they can actually touch each other and immediately communicate what their emotions are and what they're feeling exactly. And then Rhys is very ambitious. He's very studious too. He's well respected. He didn't come from a well-off, wealthy family, so he has really fought for every advancement and privilege that he has ever gotten, whereas David, it was kind of a generational hand-me-down. And so David is a little more spoiled and a little snobby in that sense, a little more materialistic, and he can come off as a jerk most of the time on page. Editor Sandra interrupting past Sandra here. There are going to be spoilers from here on out, so this is your warning. Spoilers in 5, 4, 3, 2. There is like this kind of rivalry between he and Rhys that's really fascinating, because in their secret society in Boston, they're both kind of going up for this high priest position that they want. And so David is a little nepo baby and thinks it should go to him. And then Rhys, this is actually one of my favorite scenes in the book, is at the gala where this high priest position is announced, like who's going to be getting that. And Rhys has known for a few days that it's going to go to him. And David is completely blindsided because he was so sure that he was going to get it because it belonged to his father. And that's when David's relapse happens, and there's just all this drama from it. But also, like, Moira is a very strong character in herself. I don't have any personal experience with any kind of polyamorous situation whatsoever, but Moira, even though she is like newly married to Rhys, she is the sort of woman that she is very confident in herself and her ability and her relationship with Rhys, and she is so supportive of what he needs as well. Like, she has a really good natural grasp of what he needs and what he's kind of going through. And so she's so comfortable with herself. She's like, hey, if you need closure or if you need to pursue this relationship with David again, like, go do that. I support you. I understand. I just ask that you always be upfront and honest with me. And so I really respect her for that. It was just a sort of refreshing kind of relationship to see on page. So the story really begins with David pulling up to this house, and this is where he is first possessed by this demon. He has this ability to charm or influence his way through people's doors. So this client that he's seeing, who is recently widowed, very wealthy, she initially hired David because she wanted to get back in touch with her late husband, and she started having second thoughts, and David wasn't about to have that. So he basically just like smiled and influenced his way through her door, which is it's not really something that a good person typically does. Like, he's definitely flawed in that way. I mean, you know, just in addition to the ego and stuff. And so he does this charm type of thing with a few different people to get his way in the book. And some people, like Moira, can tell when he's trying to do it and call him out on it. It just makes for such an interesting character. One of the funny things that I found in this book, especially with just who David is after he is first possessed by this demon, he is so shaken by the event that he resorts to reaching out to Rhys, just like texts him, and he hasn't reached out to him and talked to him, contacted him in like 6 months, ever since some incident happened. And Rhys is in the middle of doing like a summoning thing, which totally gets derailed when his phone gets off and he loses concentration, and then he's so pissed off. And, you know, meanwhile, Moira is meeting with a client doing a tarot card reading. They both are just so bitter and sour about David. There was like a very small jump forward, like a couple weeks, and Rhys finally reaches back out to David and tells him like, hey, I need space. I'll reach out to you when I'm ready to talk to you. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, David reached out to you 2 weeks ago, and you're just now like reaching out to him 2 weeks later to tell him that you need space. Like, that was such a petty, like, I want to talk to you, but I want to act like I'm playing hard to get and like I'm keeping my space and my boundaries type of thing. Because if you haven't reached out, like replied back to someone in 2 weeks, you really don't have to. And so for Rhys to do that, I was just kind of laughing at the scene like that. But I think where Saint Gibson's work really shines is in these complex relationships where they don't necessarily like each other 100% of the time. In fact, it almost comes off as like hating each other at times. But I think because each of these people are so gifted in what they do, they all three have very different skills and natural abilities, but they're also just so confident in their talents. That way, they're all strong and can stand on their own. I think a little bit of that ego can kind of rub at each other, which is what creates that tension and stuff. And so it's just so interesting. Evocation. So this is book 1 in the Summoner Circle series, which is planned to be a quartet. So book 2 and 3, I'm sure will probably follow like Moira and Rhys. And then the 4th book, I think, is going to follow Leda, who is the half-sister of David. At the end of this book, it felt very open, like things were not what they seemed, because David and Rhys ended up doing like this adoption ritual to kind of put a band-aid on the problem. And so because Rhys is younger than David, David ends up adopting Rhys into his family line and passing the family curse on to Rhys, which buys a little bit more time for them to figure out how to break this curse once and for all. And so at the end of the book, it's very like happy and hopeful, and it seems like a little happy ever after for now, but you definitely get the sense that they fucked something up and possibly made it worse, because there's no way that the demon is just going to accept this. I think there was something about the family curse where only blood can rewrite the terms of the curse. And so the only person that is in any way related, I think through the father's side, is Leda, the half-sister of David. So I think she's going to become a really big character in this series, and I definitely want to know more about her because she's such a wild card. She's this nightclub owner. She's very free-spirited and sexually open, and she doesn't take shit from anyone. What you see is what you get, and I just really like her character. So I'm really curious to see where Saint is going to take Leda's character and how she fits in with this family curse. It is definitely not resolved. Evocation certainly felt like that kickoff book, like here's what you get, and everything appears to have been resolved nice and tidy, but you just know that's not the case. I enjoyed this book. I still rank A Dowry of Blood, Evocation, and then An Education in Malice, I would say, but this has me very piqued in, like my interest very piqued in where the series goes. When news came out about Saint Gibson signing more books, other series, I was just not surprised at all after reading A Dowry of Blood. She has the writing chops, she has the output, she has the vision, so I'm excited to see where her career goes. I will be here to pick up and give each of her books a try. Definitely let me know if you read this book. It is an urban fantasy with some romance in it, some polyamorous romance. Also, the finished hardcovers of this book are so pretty. It's like the entire cover is a tarot card, and I really like that. And I'm kind of curious to see what the other 2 book covers are going to look like, because I'm sure they'll be just as stunning. I hope you enjoyed me kind of just blabbering on kind of aimlessly about this book and what my thoughts were, just kind of gushing about Saint's writing. And until next time, I will see you soon. Bye.